Okay, complications of burns. Well, there's this syndrome called burn shock. A person who's had major burns has lost a lot of fluid. And that's hypovolemia. So then we're talking about shock. There's not enough fluid in the body to keep the blood pressure up. They go into lots of low blood pressure situations, and that's called shock. We'll discuss shock in greater detail later in this course. The respiratory system can be damaged. A lot of that comes from smoke inhalation, but some of it comes from that hypovolemia thing that's going on. There may be a hypermetabolic response where the body is trying so hard to heal itself that it's having to go into crank up the metabolism to try and heal. They're putting everything into healing. So we can end up with some protein waste. We just can't keep up with a caloric requirement. Renal insufficiency, gastric ulceration, sepsis. Hey, you've knocked off a good portion of the immunosystem. You know, we've knocked off the protection portion of the skin. So yeah, we end up with sepsis. There may be constriction of areas under the burn, so we're dealing with some constriction there, and there may be systemic infections. There's hemodynamic instability. That's the burn shock we were talking about. And if we have burn shock, we don't have enough fluid in the blood vessels because we've lost lots of fluid. And so we don't have enough fluid to pump blood to the different organs and perfuse the tissues, so that's not enough oxygen and food getting to the different organs and tissues, so we have organ damage. And again, respiratory problems typically come from smoke inhalation. That hypermetabolic response, again, it's a stress response, increased metabolic and nutritional needs, and because we can't keep up with the caloric needs, there's a wasting of the body. And then sepsis. We're going to very, very briefly talk about pressure sores. Pressure sores are big old open sores. Sometimes just the skin is broken. Sometimes we've damaged it enough that you can see down to the bones of the individual. And they're caused by pressure. Pressure of the body, plus we have shearing forces, and then friction and moisture. Okay, shearing forces are sliding of one layer of tissue over another. It's not supposed to do that. They're supposed to work as a unit. But sometimes when we are moving people across the bed, we kind of get the different layers of the tissues rubbing against each other. Plus we have the friction of the skin rubbing against the bed sheets. And then moisture, not only will it weaken the cell wall if skin is moist, but it also changes the normal pH of the skin, thereby weakening the skin. So all of these are weakening the skin. Who gets pressure sores? People who are stuck in bed. People who are stuck in bed and may not have the ability to move around, or may not be able to feel their own tissues well enough to know that, hey, I need to roll over, it's time to roll over. So, what population are we talking about? We're talking about people who have, who in many cases are in nursing homes. They're chronically ill people. If there's a problem with the circulatory status, not getting enough blood to the area, we're going to be at risk for pressure sores. Remember, the blood brings nutrients and the blood carries away waste products. Somebody with decreased sensation, perhaps they have a spinal cord injury. They can't feel that, hey, I'm starting to fall asleep here, or I'm starting to get uncomfortable, I need to move around. Mobility. They can't move around. They physically are incapable of rolling over or shifting their weight as they're sitting. They're more likely to get pressure sores. People who have the shearing and the friction forces, again, that's people who quite often are stuck in bed and are needing somebody to help them move. Skin moisture, as we said. People who have urine and or fecal incontinence, that gets on the skin, and the skin breaks down more easily when it comes in contact with those. People with poor nutritional status, they don't heal well. They don't keep their body as healthy. And hydration status, people who are either dehydrated, that makes the skin weak, or people who have edema, that's stretching the skin and will weaken the skin. A couple words about skin cancer. Well, skin cancer, we get this quite often from the sun, too much sun exposure. Ultraviolet rays, they hit the melanocytes and produce melanin. The job of melanin is to protect the skin from ultraviolet rays. But if the UV rays exceed what our melanin can block, we get a sunburn. And if we get too many sunburns, we permanently damage the skin and can end up with skin cancer later in life. Sun exposure increases the risk of skin cancer. The more sun exposure we get, especially early in life, as young children, teenagers, and young adults, the greater the chance of getting all skin cancers. Severe sun exposure with blistering increases the risk of malignant melanoma. And malignant melanoma can metastasize and eventually cause death. And sun exposure includes not only just regular sun exposure from the sun, it also includes tanning beds. Now, malignant melanoma, the things that we need to be looking for and assessing our clients for to see, do we have malignant melanoma going on here, is asymmetry. You know, you're looking at moles or you're looking at darkened spots at the body. They should be symmetric. Well, if they're not, we need to get more evaluation. The borders need to be regular. That has to do with asymmetry. That has to do with symmetry. It needs to be a nice, smooth, almost circle kind of area. The color needs to be the same throughout. Now we get an area that some of it's dark brown and some of it's light brown within that mole. That could be a problem. It needs to be fairly small. So if it's greater than 0.6 centimeters, we're worried. We need to send these people to get further evaluation. And if they continue to change, if that area continues to change with time, we are worried and we need to get further evaluation of the spot.